This is the Fitness Wisdom Podcast.
If you actually care about your health, you want to stop putting and using toxic personal care products on your hair, skin, and in general, your entire body. Your skin is one of the largest organs of your body and absorbs pretty much anything that you put on it. The more aware you are about these topics, the better choices you can make for your health and well-being. This is why I only use blue hair wash on my hair. It comes with only 6 non-toxic, scientifically backed ingredients for hair health and potentially growth. It comes with none of the nasties and all of the good stuff that your scalp and hair needs to be healthy. Grab yourself some non-toxic and super effective hair wash and use the promo code MobilityFitness for a 15% discount as well.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Fitness Wisdom Podcast. Today I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Sara Pugh and we're going to be having a quantum conversation. So we're going to be talking about light, water and magnetism. These are honestly some of my absolute favorite topics, and they should be some of yours as well, because this knowledge is absolutely fundamental and foundational to your health. You know about everything on a cellular, molecular, atomic level. So this is why I wanted to pick your brain today. I would love to hear your background story, how you got into circadian rhythms and quantum biology in the first place. What was the catalyst that got you into this space?
Okay, I suppose just to backtrack, I did actually study light and biology when I was at university, because I used fluorescence, and my PhD was on fluorescence and protein folding. So I had an understanding about light. I can't say it was in depth, and I did lots of microscopy and things like that. So that then leads into why I left science. So first of all, it's a really great place to get a really bad back from sitting and microscopes and putting numbers into boxes on the computer.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, after I worked on protein folding, I worked on cholesterol and statins and heart cells. And in terms of light, cholesterol is a really fascinating molecule. And as we know, it's completely wrongly demonized. And I kind of worked that out then. So that's why I left science and I went into Pilates, because I just wanted to, and movement, because I wanted to cure my back and shoulder pain.
Yeah.
And then once you get into that kind of right brain world, you end up being exposed to other things like hypnosis and Reiki and fascia and water. So I was exposed then to this idea of water being something not just for washing glassware in or drinking. There was a lot more to the biology. Then in the terms of mitochondria, it's completely incorrectly taught at university, along with a lot of other biology and physics. So I think properly to get into circadian, I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago when Dave Asprey had this company called True Dark, and he was starting to talk about blocking blue lights at night. And then I think he also started to talk about red light panels, and he was the first person I heard talking about EZ water. And he used to have people like Stephanie Seneff on his bulletproof radio, and back then I couldn't have imagined myself even having a podcast. And then I've had Dr. Stephanie Seneff twice on my podcast, and then I think bit by bit I kind of embraced it more and more, because it kind of sounds simple, but then like you say, there's sort of nuances. In terms of the circadian rhythm, I didn't get it about the sunrise and the morning light. I used to go outside a lot, but just outside. I didn't realize there were specific times to get benefits for thyroid or neurotransmitters or setting body clocks and things like that. And I took it even more seriously during COVID, because I started an internet business. So I was just inside all the time under artificial light, and I should have known better. So and then it sort of just snowballed inexorably into more and more and more rabbit holes, and it continues to do so. But I always go back to my old rabbit holes, like movement. I never stop learning something new about movement, and I never stop learning something new about water and hydrogen or physics or plasma or whatever. And then I'm always trying to get the science and find out the most correct version of it at the moment. Example for things like even gravity or charge, and then to work out how can I explain the relevance of this to lay people so we can make it practical. Because what I've found, and maybe you, there are people like orders of magnitude more intelligent than me that can explain things like charge and magnetism, but then they don't seem to look very healthy. So I always make the effort to sort of do it
Yeah.
myself as well,
Yeah.
because I learn a lot
Yeah.
by doing things and running labs, which again, that's my sort of science side, because I have a very sort of also esoteric and spiritual side. But the more I study physics, the more I realize it's all explainable by physics,
Yeah.
including telepathy or lucid dreaming or entanglement or action at a distance. But yet the scientific side of me always wants to make sure that people are doing something that's a protocol, it's in order, they're not trying to do too much at once, they're being accountable, they're making notes, they're being honest, and finding the best thing for somebody. In a way, I think when we met last time, talking about meeting them where they're at, but then
Yeah.
just making sure they don't just tread water, because that's the other thing that can happen is people say, well, this is not working. And then when I find out what they're actually doing, I'm thinking, yeah, well, I'm kind of, you've made a good start and you understand, but you actually have to implement things for a given amount of time or at a specific time or this, that, and the other.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because when it comes to, well, thank you for sharing your background story. That's very, very cool. And it's nice to hear that you came from like the university background is what actually got you out. You wanted to leave that world and you wanted to explore how to apply this knowledge, into your life, into the real world. Because what's the point in knowing all of this fantastic information and to not, apply it, right? Because we can know all the things in the world, but if we don't take it and we put it into application and we do it on a daily basis or on a consistent basis, we're not going to see any of the results. So everything that we're about to talk about today is going to be extremely valuable, and I think super, super important for people to understand. And if they don't take at least one thing from this conversation to apply into their life, it's almost like no point. Like, yeah, I get it, we are planting a seed, but there has to be some action, and it's actually really, really simple, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it's like everything, it's people overcomplicate, including movement and food. Because there's sort of noise on the internet, and
Yeah,
of course that
too much.
there are phenomenal channels that I could recommend, but then there are people who are just wanting to give information or make reels that in order to sell something, and we have to always question the motives of things. And
Of
often I
course.
found the most weird thing or something that's inconvenient, like exercising outside in the cold or seeing the sunrise, it's free, and they're the things that offer the most benefits.
Yeah.
And again, in terms of addiction, which is a really interesting subject, we are primed to be addicted to the sun and nature and being outside, and it's
Yeah.
something that people who are stuck in an indoor living or are stuck in a rut, they can't imagine, oh, how could I not watch telly, how can I not have a cheeseburger? But when you get into this quantum realm, and there's, no matter what, there's always more, and it's almost like you don't even want to do the things that you used to do. And I think that's something, it's very experiential. You have to feel it in your own body, and the feeling is blissful and amazing when done properly.
Exactly, and then that becomes the bigger driver for individuals to be able to actually do the good things, the good habits on a daily basis. But if they don't, experience it and make a routine and a habit out of it, then they won't be able to experience that. And they prefer to get the easy way, right? The easy pleasures. And maybe you can explain to people how blue light itself, artificial blue light from screens and light bulbs and, everywhere these days, is actually really bad for our dopamine, and actually how it keeps us trapped in this loop, and why it's so important for us to block it as much as we can throughout the day and to get natural sunlight.
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So with blue light, it's been known for a long time. We can just start with the basics, that it massively disrupts sleep and it tanks people's melatonin. And we all know when we've had a bad night's sleep, it's just we want to have snacks, or we want to chill out and just watch TV or use sort of stimulants or whatever. So that's one factor. Yeah. Then the blue light interferes with our blood sugar and our cortisol, so it raises both, and it also interferes with insulin. So this leaves people wide open to wanting food that they shouldn't. And then to add on to this, it has a negative impact on our dopamine levels, because if we're inside under blue light, that means therefore we're not outside in UV light. And that's a really important part of making dopamine function how it should. And then sort of on a more sort of on a deeper level, it does things like it damages your eyes, it damages the macula, it damages the retinol or the vitamin A. And then that can become sort of nasty and cause damage in the body. And when people start to feel bad, then they start to seek out the more pleasurable things. And again, from a nervous system perspective, our eyes and our ears are really important. So if we worsen our sight, it's very threatening for the nervous system. So that can manifest itself as anxiety. I mean, people sometimes who've been given the wrong prescription of glasses get horrible headaches or feel angry or irritated, and that's what happens if you allow the blue light from the screens and the LEDs to damage your sight. It's threatening for your body and it's giving you a warning. And then when people start to get angry and irritated, it's sort of they're not experiencing pleasure or bliss or things that relate to dopamine and things like that. So there's multiple ways in which it is a problem. The other thing it does is it inhibits complex 4 in the mitochondria, the one that makes our metabolic water, which is deuterium depleted. So first of all, we have less of our water battery, so that's the true hydration. And then obviously we can't make our own deuterium depleted water inside, so we're more likely to accumulate deuterium, which is a heavy isotope of hydrogen, as we're talking, maybe we'll talk about hydrogen later, maybe not. So this deuterium that fills us up just basically burdens us, it slows things down. It's been shown to cause cancer by Dr. Gabor Shomoli. It interferes with our hormones. It can lead to obesity, insulin resistance. So again, not being able to make enough water and therefore having more deuterium in us and being burdened and weighed down, this again makes people feel bad and they don't want to do things. Problems start to come out, sort of any kind of illness you can imagine. And again, that takes away from people's, joy of life or pleasure. So they become sick and then they end up going down that sort of spiral.
Yeah, what a fantastic explanation. Yeah, I think it's so important for people to understand all this knowledge, because now blue light is everywhere, right? It's on screens, TVs, like fluorescent light bulbs, like overhead, even on car lights these days, which is absolutely brutal when you're driving. So it feels like you need to be wearing at least your yellow blockers, when you're driving, especially in the evening time. Or at least be, try and be at home as early as you can, so you can avoid any kind of artificial light in your eyes at any time of the day. So would you say that the damage is worse if it's after sunset compared to the exposure is before sunset to artificial
Yeah,
blue?
definitely. Because in terms of our bodies, we're kind of designed to receive a beating during the day.
Right.
So that could be from the environment, toxins, other people, just general life, and also including non-native EMF. And there's obviously blue light that comes out of the sun, but that's sort of full spectrum, proper natural blue light. We're talking about the spike of blue light. So first of all, just after sunset, your body's not expecting it anyway. And biology hates surprises. And if you surprise it, it basically stresses it out. And then our eyes are much more sensitive to photons after sunset. So there's far less wiggle room. So even if people do block blue light, sometimes they've got like blue blockers on and then a massive telly. So all of the blue light's coming, on their skin, but also the actual brightness. So our rooms should ideally be like sort of 10 lux in the evening. So it's the brightness in addition to the blue light we need to block later in the evening or after sunset, just because the eyes are way more sensitive. And then the converse is true. In the morning, we need to go outside and get sort of whacked by the sunlight to sort of fully wake ourselves up in the morning, because everything's less sensitive in the morning anyway. So yeah, it's more of a problem definitely after dark, and it can be a problem in the winter, because some places like the UK, we have very long nights and short days in the winter.
Yeah, exactly. So you feel like it's a bit more difficult to get up in the morning, and also you feel like you need to maybe sleep more as well during
I
the
suppose it goes, but it's more. It's not really that because the sun comes up that late, so it's like 20 past 8.
right?
That that's for some people because I'm an early person. That's super late,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah,
more to do with if the sun sets at 4 o'clock, then you've got a long time before even an early bedtime, like 7:30 or 8. You've still got 4 hours where you could you have to be careful of the blue light, and obviously people have to be sociable and have a life and work and things like that. So it's
yeah,
more to do with I would say if someone was not an early riser and was new to quantum, learning it in the winter is actually better because they'll be able to get up and see the sunrise, and that's sort of absolutely critical.
mm,
And then
mm,
working on blocking blue light. If people are at work, obviously that's a problematic. But if people are self-employed
yeah,
or retired, it's
yeah,
much easier to do, especially if the family's on board. It's really hard for students and young people because
yeah.
I was talking to a guy yesterday who shares a room with another student, and the other student's got sort of the entire electrical department of a department store in his room at night trying to sleep with him. And this
Oh
poor guy
God,
follows us online. So, this guy's got all of his tech in this bedroom.
yeah,
So yeah, and that's the other problem is that with when I have a friend who over time I've been converting to this way of thinking, and I've said it doesn't really matter, we don't hurt anybody by eating shit. Basically it doesn't affect anybody else, but our shitty light and all this tech,
yeah,
like that guy with all the tech in the
yeah.
bedroom, or street lights, or people who
Oh, yeah.
light up their house like a Christmas tree and let it, a swimming pool lit all night. Why does it need to be like that? And the whole
Yeah. I just I just lost you there for a second. Yeah, you said about the neighborhood.
Oh yeah, in the neighbourhood when people have their swimming pools lit up or they don't turn the lights off, and then street lights wreak havoc for people as well.
Yeah, 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 definitely. I found it fascinating that you said that how blue light itself actually is how it actually it damages our senses, and because of that our nervous system gets into this sympathetic state, whereas I had the idea that I understood that blue light does these things, but I didn't think of it to that of an extent. I thought it's because of the hormones primarily that it puts us in a sympathetically driven state, but actually it does make sense that when our senses are more dampened, the brain now starts to freak out more because it's not receiving as much information from the
Mm.
environment as it should, because the more information it can perceive, like from having our bare feet on the ground as an example instead of wearing shoes, or unobstructed light from the eyes instead of wearing sunglasses outside, and all of this stuff, then the body can understand where it is in space and understand the situation, the season and all of this with the temperature. But if more information is obstructed coming in, now the nervous system is going to be more in this threatened state, right? It feels like, what's going on? I need to be super protective with what I'm doing because I feel like I don't know what's going
Oh,
on, so it's like freaking out.
oh, absolutely. It's like, for example, you can get a threat, say if you have a sprained ankle, or because you couldn't run away from predators, and then our vestibular system or our hearing as well can be damaged by sort of non-quantum activities like loud noises or people playing music too
Mm.
loud in the ear, because melanin lines our senses, not just a suntan or
Yeah,
other things it does. And then again, if we degrade the melanin, again, we're interfering with maybe our ears and our hearing, so we can't hear the threat
well,
coming. So there's lots of other ways to sort of look into how non-quantum activities can affect melanin and result in the same outcome as the blue light damaging our vision, because the brain ranks the eyes above the vestibular system,
mm,
but the vestibular
mm,
system second. So mess with either, and they're both interlinked neurologically anyway. So if you mess with one, you've done something to the other,
yeah,
and that's a humongous threat to the brain, because it's our way of exploring our environment. But fundamentally we're wired for survival, not performance. So we've taken
mm.
away the ability to see the threat or hear the threat, or just identify it. And then I suppose there's the nose and smells are the same.
Yeah, I find it fascinating how melanin is found in the areas where energy transfer is meant to occur. Like, in all the areas that we're meant to sense inside our body, that's where like melanin is found. I think it's super fascinating, and it shows you actually how important melanin is, because a lot of people, they vilify the production of melanin. They say, that if you are exposed to the sun and you have melanin on your skin, it's already a sign of sun damage and all of this. What do you say to that?
I think that's just appalling because, first of all, melanin is like a black hole pigment, so it can absorb molecules like toxins, but also it absorbs everything in the electromagnetic spectrum, and it can do things like it can turn photons into phonons, so that would be sound in liquid, and then
Wow,
phonons back
so
to
cool.
photons. So it's like a transducer, and because it can receive all these different channels. Like our eyes can only do vision, and our ears can only hear. The melanin is more multi-sensory, so it basically can translate many more inputs, and it can also output information because it can also behave like a semiconductor, and also in certain circumstances with its own bioplasma. It's also believed to be a superconductor, so that means the electrons can just go on and on and on forever, not lose energy. So that's something fundamentally massive. Then back to the hydrogen again, that melanin also has the capacity to split water in the body to make hydrogen, oxygen, and electrons. So that's more energy for us. So it's multifaceted, and it's really misunderstood. And I know what you mean about people saying it's unhealthy to have the appearance of a suntan, whereas now that I'm more into quantum, I really notice how pale people are. And then there's also the neuromelanin, which is a bit under debate, but then something like the substantia nigra in the brain, which is black, is full of melanin, and that degrades when people get Parkinsonian symptoms. But then there's tracks of melanin all over the brain and in other parts of the body. So the loss of this inside melanin that sort of colors our body on the inside is also a big threat to health as well. And that's why a lot of people just simply going and getting more sun, they just feel better. And most people will say, oh, I feel better after being away on holiday, even though they ate food they shouldn't and drank alcohol. Not that I'm saying those are okay, but they just said, I just feel so much better. And I think also on a sort of other level, because depending on the light, I am pretty tanned. Sometimes you can see, sometimes you can't, but people always comment on it, and it's never negative. It's always, oh, you look well. And there's some sort of primal part of us that finds being melanated something that's healthy. And then if you see somebody very pale, even if you don't know them, you sometimes think, oh, I wonder if that person's not well.
Yeah. That's totally true. I find the melanin topic absolutely fascinating. And when you talked about the melanin is able to split light into electrons, water and hydrogen, is the electrons harvested from the sun, or are those electrons already within the water?
Oh, yeah,
in the easy?
So the water is a reservoir of electrons anyway, because
Right.
it's going to have electrons contained with it. I think it liberates 4 electrons,
Right.
and it's I think it's Jose Herrera's work, human photosynthesis. So there's multiple reasons why melanin's helpful, and then there are other things it does, but I think it's sort of so fundamental just in how we perceive the world and navigate it. And then, of course, it just acts to protect our skin, being a suntan, and then it can collect these unwanted chemicals and pass them out of the body, for example, heavy metals, and then it's a source of being able to make energy for us as well. And everything revolves around energy. Things like leptin resistance, people think it's just relates to food electrons, which is miles from the truth. It relates to how much charge or redox you've got, and how well you can extract energy from the environment. So that would be the plasma or the ether, as well as the sun, us being a solar panel. That would be sort of the major part. Then magnetism is a form of energy that we can get. We don't need shoes. We can stand on the earth with shoes on and get the magnetism, and that changes the speed the electrons and protons move. And then we can obviously draw energy in by grounding, be it just touching a plant or swimming outside, like you said, standing barefoot. And then water is an enormous reservoir of electrons as well, which includes structured water or vortexed water, as well as the 4th phase of water in our bodies. It's just a huge reservoir of charge or store. So the more energy in an electromagnetic sense we've got in the body, because leptin fundamentally is an electromagnetic sensor and reporter, even though we call it a hormone. If people don't get enough energy from their environment, they're blue light toxic with a horrible circadian rhythm, that the leptin's blind to the body fat. So you might have plenty of what we would call energy, but the leptin doesn't perceive that because it's reading energy in a sort of different language. And then obviously that leads into sort of food, unwanted behaviors with food and things like that. So it kind of ties into a lot of things which people are interested in as well. And it, like you said, it opens up lots of other ways to look at common problems that people have or are stuck with.
Yeah, so what kind of problems do people experience when they are not living a circadian and quantum aligned lifestyle? What kind of symptoms have you seen in people?
All right, so first of all, the first one would be insomnia, and then anxiety and depression, because they're sort of very fundamentally linked into light and sleep. Obviously, addiction, then because our circadian rhythm, we can think about it as clocks and timing. If our timing's off, all the rest of our biochemistry will be. Yeah, so all the rest of our biochemistry will be, and then the timing of cell cycle and cell division can be disrupted. So there are numerous links, probably 30 years of research about cancer and a poor circadian rhythm. Then, as we mentioned earlier, the blue light and would link into diabetes and insulin resistance. We've already mentioned obesity. Then, because our skin's designed to be a solar panel, if it doesn't get sunlight, we run into sort of skin problems. If we get the wrong light, it can be things like acne, eczema, a multitude of problems. And then just on a level of just malaise, it's sort of like having jet lag all the time, and when most people have experienced that, and it can range from bad sleep, mood swings, pain, sort of catching, sort of being susceptible to infections, all sorts of things. But I think also a lot of the time, if people have a particular problem and they're not doing anything quantum, if they started doing it, a lot of that problem, if not all of it's going to go away.
Yeah, it's super powerful, because this knowledge that you just shared is literally foundational, isn't it? It's like literally like the program in which the body runs on, and all the other health promoting acts that we do, such as exercise, eating well, sleeping enough, drinking high quality water, like breathing through our nose, they almost don't matter if we don't get the foundation right. I mean, of course they matter. It's better if you're doing them than not to do them. But the effects of those things are going to be amplified if we follow a circadian and quantum-based lifestyle. Whereas if we don't, those efforts are way more difficult. So it's going to be way harder to lose weight, way more difficult to regulate our nervous system state, as an example. I think that's absolutely huge, especially in a modern world. Regulating our nervous system is so important, and I think it's one of the most important topics, in this time right now, because so many people have a dysregulated nervous system. They're feeling anxious or depressed. They feel like they have an elevated heart rate, that they can't calm down in the evening, like you said, insomnia. They can't sleep, and they just feel like they're all the time on the edge. And the reason is because the body is perceiving that there is a lack of energy in the system, and also we are stressing it all the time with these different invisible and visible stressors, like, for example, the non-native electromagnetic fields, as the Wi-Fi's, all the radio frequencies, the electrical fields, and also the magnetic fields, which are not native to our Earth and our biology, is stressing our system invisibly all the time. So this is why you and me tell people to turn their Wi-Fi off at night, to put their phone on flight mode when they don't need it, to distance themselves as far away as they can from cell towers or anywhere which is big cities and things like this, because distance is your friend when it comes to these stressors, right? You want to distance yourself, so eliminate the stressor, but you also want to do the things, which is what we talked about, the circadian and quantum things, to rebalance the system, because it's not sufficient to just do the circadian and quantum things only, but you have to also eliminate the stressor as well. Because if you keep on having the stressor, but you're doing the quantum things, you may not experience the results that you want, right?
Oh yeah, the thing is, I think nowadays you have to do everything. So I completely
Yeah,
disagree with anyone that says food doesn't matter, and I'm forever
yeah,
making improvements for my way of eating, to the point of now sort of raw animal based, just to get more and more nutrients and less sort of tampered with food.
interesting.
And then, like you said, we were bombarded with technology. I think exercise and movement's really important.
Very
It
important.
all is. But then it
Yeah,
would be, say if you had a classic car and it had the timing out, no matter how much fancy fuel or air filters or carburetors or exhausts or additional tuning you do, if the timing's out, the car isn't going to function. It's going to misfire and things like that. So it is a foundation, because again, there are so many biochemical reactions our body has to do, that if the timing's off, because we know the circadian rhythm's off, it just means things are inefficient and chaotic. So you just have more chaos in the body and more entropy, and obviously neg entropy or implosion is what's a healing force. So if everything's all chaotic, then it's not possible to heal. And then with the nervous system dysregulation, that's massive, because fear and anger and things stop people accessing bliss states, and then they're hating their exercise. Whereas if they were in a good mood,
yeah,
exactly the same workout would be
yeah.
amazing, or it would be awesome to sit at a sacred site and watch the sunrise. But if people are all upset and angry, they can't get joy and bliss out of things. And that's
Yeah.
also an important part, is this Wi-Fi and the artificial blue light sort of robs people of their bliss states as well.
Yes, yes. It just robs you of this like unnecessary, like it just steals you. Is everything okay there?
Yeah, I think that there's someone just posting a leaflet. Yeah.
All right, I thought you're ready to pull out your kung fu moves.
No, it's fine. It's only a pleasant living.
How the different light frequencies or different colors of light influence our biology? I noticed that you made a really great post, maybe a week ago or so, about talking about how the different light frequencies are influencing our biology. So I would love for you to go through every single frequency of light, like blue light, red light, UV light, and the effects that it has on our biology.
Okay, I'll try and be brief. So if we start off with UVA, that's really important for making nitric oxide, which is more than just blood pressure regulation. It's mood and sort of other things as well, immunity. Then UVA also is important for making melanin, which we've discussed a lot. Then it's part of making neurotransmitters. And the way it makes melanin is it makes it via MSH, alpha MSH, and that's an appetite suppressant. And then UV light also is part of the trigger for production of endocannabinoids and enkephalins and endorphins. So these are important for sensations, mood, and many other things. So it's sort of like getting high in our own supply, because we have our own biological pharmacy to make chemicals that make us feel good. And we don't need synthetic things to open this pharmacy. We can use the sunlight. Then UVB, to some extent, makes melanin as well, but it's important for making vitamin D naturally from the sun, because they're discovering sort of other forms of vitamin D that are non-light active or UV active. Sort of, we won't go into that, but the predominant the main form that everyone's heard of, the vitamin D from the UVB in the sun. We need that strength of UV to crack the cholesterol to begin that's sort of waiting just under the skin to begin the complex reaction to make all these different forms of vitamin D, because there are over 20, and the first step starts with the sunlight. So, and then we go into the blue light, which we've talked about. The natural blue light is really important for timekeeping, sort of our circadian clock. And it's also important for metabolism. There are some studies on fat cell size, and they're smaller in natural blue light from the sun. Then the green light, there are other things which green light does that I can't remember off the top of my head, but predominantly it's important. The study I looked at in 2004 was for pain. So that would be sort of chronic pain, things like migraines, fibromyalgia, chronic pain without any sort of mechanical identifiable cause. And also that seems to work via the endocannabinoids pathway as well, a different one to the UV. And then we've got things like yellow light and amber light, which come out of the sun, and they have healing properties. But the papers I found, just so we can be scientific about it, it was on T-cell lymphocytes, and also there was a study on yellow light and macular degeneration in conjunction with red light, showing very good effect. Then if we get into the red light and the near infrared, these are really important for the mitochondria, and our water battery as well. So we need the red light to expand the EZ. There's a relationship between the way hemoglobin absorbs that's in the red, and there are huge amounts of studies on red light, because with the red light and the mitochondria, if they're functioning better, then everything else is going to function better. And we've got near infrared light available in the environment all year round, all day and all night. So that means it must be really important. And things like glass, for example, blocks pretty much all the UV, and it blocks about half of the near infrared. And then the other colours or parts of the spectrum can pretty much get through, because obviously we wouldn't be able to see properly. And it's these invisible lights. I just want to emphasize the near infrared and the UVs are technically invisible. That's why people don't understand that behind glass is not the same as being out in the sun, because it blocks the invisible lights. And they're the two that balance each other and are really healing, because the way in which these light frequencies work, they don't necessarily work individually, because it's not a good idea to just use a UV light inside by itself without the rest of the sun spectrum. The same with the colours I've mentioned. There's way more complexity to this. So people will often try and build a whole panel of different colour lights to biohack their body using light. But the problem is they haven't got the background of the rest of the solar spectrum. And also there's more that the sun emits, not just light. There's tons of stuff like plasma and scalar waves, and the environment in which we're in outside is different to the environment in the house. So it's really difficult to make, well, it's impossible to make an artificial sun, as well as it's impossible to make an artificial inside on the inside, because you don't have the rest of the environmental factors. But in saying that, what happens here is, I think, because some people will say, oh yeah, I bought a red light panel and it was rubbish, or I tried blue light for my acne and it didn't work, and I tried yellow light and my eyes are the same. And I think it's like nutrition and the way in which some people just have a bigger need for, say, zinc or magnesium than their next door neighbor. We have individual light frequency needs, and if we go outside and offer the body everything that's available, it'll just take what it needs. The other thing that's important actually is the violet light, because that stimulates an opsin 3 and cephalopsin. And when I was reading about it, it doesn't just perform important tasks for our mood and our skin. It's also really important for cold thermogenesis. And in cold places in the winter, like the UK, that we've got a really long sunrise window. So that means there's loads of violet light, loads of red light, and it's cold. So Mother Nature provided the violet light for an environment. So when you're out cold, your body behaves properly metabolically and chemically towards the cold and enjoys it rather than just rushing in. So there's, the things I discover about these different colors, there's like way more that I haven't dug into properly yet, but it can get overwhelming. In one way, but then in simple terms, you can just go outside and all the frequencies of light are there for you. And I think there are sure people who need more light than others, and they would need to go somewhere sunnier, but not to underestimate the power of being able to heal in northern cold countries in winter. There's lots of opportunities. And then the other really important thing is that what light actually is on a physics level is like ridiculously complicated, and it really is just sort of perturbations in the plasma or the ether, and darkness in its own way is a fundamentally vital part of all of this. So the absence of light completely at night balances out this gigantic sort of rainbow kaleidoscope of light that we use, and we have to have that quietness and that complete absence of all of this going on at night, and this sort of opposed polarity is really important. And a lot of people try so hard in the day and do everything right, they didn't realize they had to have their bedroom pitch black, or they'll go on their phone in bed, or they're unfortunate enough that they've got white curtains and then they're in a neighborhood where people don't turn the light off. So there's the whole thing about whatever you have, as in the light, you have to have the opposite of the complete darkness for it to fully work. And I think sometimes that's where people make a mistake, is they do it all right in the day and forget their bedroom is sort of a sanctuary. And at night, if we can make our bedroom a nice pitch black cool sanctuary, we can undo some of the barrage that we got from all the things you described in the daytime, including the non-native EMFs, and be able to thrive in this sort of somewhat more unfriendly environment. Because I think everybody can heal.
Yes.
We have sort of our inner healer as well, and of course the mindset to heal. And as you said, the nervous system, if that's dysregulated, it's not a conducive environment for healing. But then humans do just need a cold, dark cave to go and heal in as well. And as you're asking about light, the whole of a good night's sleep all starts in the morning, because it sets the clocks with the sunrise, and then we've got the UV rise, which makes the appropriate neurotransmitters, including serotonin, and then that can get changed into melatonin later for sleeping. And it's a different melatonin that the mitochondria make. They make melatonin for themselves all day.
So
they make it for them, and that's why exercising in blue light's really bad, because they're trying, they're working really hard, and then you're not giving them near infrared light, so they can make the melatonin. It influences the water and the electron transport chain and the ATPase. So they're working overly hard in the gym, and they're not sort of healing properly. So again, I think exercise and working out is amazing. It's just some people find that they're not getting the results they should. So it could be the environment or the time of day doing their workout.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think everything that you just said was absolutely on point and fantastic and expertly explained. So thank you for elaborating on that, because I think it's so important for people to understand that sunlight is not just sunlight. Sunlight is information. Like, all of this information, your body is receiving that, right? And our body is literally like an antenna, and it's decoding that information, and it's deciphering that, and it's trying to understand the information about the environment. It's trying to understand where we are, what's the season, what's going on, what's the time of day, so it can function optimally. Because it seems to be so that the body runs on all these clocks and timing, and if the timing is off, even if things are running well, they're not going to be running at the right time. So then things start to break down, because things have to happen in a particular order, right? So it's not only important to be exposed to the light, but as you mentioned, it's so critical to block the artificial blue light after sunset, because that is when our body's regenerating and repairing and healing. It's not just about just going to bed and waking up the next day. It's about trying to go into almost, like how they say that the Egyptians, why they build the pyramids and why they have the tombs, is to go into these regeneration chambers, and they're able to regenerate their bodies and come back, and they're able to be, rejuvenated. Well, that's what's kind of happening when we're going to bed every single evening and we're blocking the artificial blue light after sunset. We're basically regenerating our body, and ready for the next day to be able to tolerate all of these stressors all over again. If you enjoy all these awesome conversations that I'm having with the guests, I would really appreciate if you left me a 5-star review on Spotify, and you also followed me also on YouTube as well, because that helps to get the message out there and spread this awesome knowledge and wisdom. I hope that you have an awesome morning/evening wherever you are in the world, and until next time. This is the Fitness Wisdom Podcast.